Okay, cool. So the first thing I want to do this morning, just because I like to think that we create a space here um, for yes, great morning, Kathy. I like to think that we create a space here on this show and specifically the live format of the Make Sense with Dr. JC podcast, where we can run the interface response system and allow ourselves, give ourselves permission to take our opinion, our knee jerk reflex and opinion, and recognize that there's a good chance that it's been conditioned and just put it aside for a little bit, just for a little bit, right? Pause it long enough where you allow yourself to entertain different, you know, vantage points and things like that. So I don't know if everybody, hey, great morning, Lumi, People's PDP for the 99% joined. Elizabeth, great morning. So last night we had a great opportunity, and it's going to filter through this day to practice this stuff that I'm talking about, and that would be the Super Bowl. So I don't know if you perceived the halftime show as controversial or just awesome, you know, but you could see that there was a very, very big divide, and for the most part, it's unconscious. So another thing we can do is whenever I see people behaving differently than me or adverse to me, because we're going to talk about belief today. We're going to move beyond belief today. But whenever I see humans just acting differently, I'll have my initial knee jerk reflex and my opinions and things like that. And that's fine. But I try to remove myself from participating emotionally with it. And I just like to watch and observe the behavior component of it. I see some folks coming in on YouTube. So feel free to comment and everything like that and join the conversation because that's what makes the live rich. This will be edited for a podcast episode that will drop on Friday called Beyond Belief. But what are your thoughts? I woke up this morning and I saw a lot of people from one side putting posts up that, might have looked like they were actually interested in what you had to say, but it was kind of like a bullying kind of a message saying like, are you one of the crazy people that thought this? And then there were other people that, were the crazy ones and all of that stuff. So it was an opportunity. The tension, I don't look at it as a negative thing. I look at it as it's an opportunistic thing. And what is this? The mind is a terrible thing to waste, a lot of waste. Well, so there would be, Night Lure is made a statement, which I totally understand, and I can see where you're coming from, that there's a lot of mind wasting going on. But the question I would ask you is what it is that you're referring to mind wasting. Do they perceive it as mind wasting? And do they even think that you're wasting your mind? So remember, there's the opportunity to run the interface response system and say, here's another opportunity as well. So we have somebody on YouTube that is using profanity right now. So perfect example. So my knee jerk reaction when I see that is that, here's somebody that said something like totally messed up and it's inappropriate. And I hope that it doesn't bother, anybody. That's just my knee jerk reaction. But then I look and, I have empathy. I hold back on what I think about it. And I look at this person and say, I wonder why that person woke up and wanted to, you know, say such a thing, right? I would assume that there's something going on in their life that I don't know, maybe some sort of a feeling of weakness or self-worth or something that they would want to say something provocative to stir the pot or something like that. So you can see how I'm in this space, whether it's the Super Bowl halftime show, or, watching somebody say something, inappropriate. I can evaluate it on all aspects, right? And also, not play into it probably the way that certain people would like you to play into it. So hey, Lori, great morning. Great morning, David. So anyway, I just would love to know your thoughts, not what your opinion is, but your thoughts on allowing yourself to sit in between, the sides, the opinions of the Super Bowl halftime show. You know, the controversy, United States, the Trump, all of that stuff. Can you can you allow yourself to just partition that off for a second and just sit neutral without an opinion? Because we're going to talk about belief today and how powerful it is and how it can unconsciously dictate what it is that what's going on in your life. Frank says, "Who cares?" Right. I mean, I'm wearing this shirt for a reason today. It says breaking news, I don't care. And it's just for fun. It's for fun. But that's what I hope this show gives you the ability to do is not run from adversity or not fight it, but allow yourself to look at it opportunistically, you know? Um, I've been through so much shit in my life that was really, really tough, and at the time, I wasn't excited about that stuff happening, but, what I noticed is that it made me stronger. It was an opportunity for me to try my stuff out. I was working with, or I was sitting with my friend yesterday and just talking about all the crazy things that have happened, and how one of the biggest reframes that I ever made that I guess I'm passing on to you today, take it or leave it, is, how they were opportunities. They were they were events that were taking place that gave me the ability to try my stuff, and my stuff works. So is your kung fu strong right now? Or are you finding yourself feeling the knee-jerk reflex of hearing somebody that's adverse or opposite and flying off the handle? Or do you have the ability to stop and say, which means you haven't made up your mind yet, and think about it a little bit, and maybe think about it long enough to realize that, when Moises Bueno says, "Suck my dick and balls," right? I have to stop and say, like, what's that about? You know what I mean? I think the show of Bad Bunny was spectacular because he represents, yeah, I mean, so there's a stance that he represents Latino. I mean, I thought the performance was fantastic, but I just allowed myself to step away from everything and just evaluate what was going on. So, I'm still morally outraged, what Janet Frank, that's funny. Frank is still morally outraged, about what happened with, Janet Jackson. That's awesome. See, I love that kind of humor. Okay, so let's get started today. Today is called Beyond Belief. We're gonna open up, and identify, the powers of belief, and we're gonna move beyond it. We're gonna try that's why I opened up like this, is I wanna see if we can allow ourselves to move beyond belief. That's what we're gonna look at today. So I call this Beyond Belief, the neuroscience of reality itself, perception, and the biology of belief. So we're gonna look at the idea of stopping our brains from lying to us from time to time. Now, you're gonna have to wanna do that, because if you don't want to move to a different place in your life, well, then you're gonna have to probably just sign off right now, right? Because you're gonna just think this is stupid. This idea of even challenging or disputing your own beliefs, right? I like to challenge everything and dispute everything. So if that's not what you're looking for, if you're just rock solid in your beliefs and you don't even want to entertain anything else and you have your right protect switch on, this episode's not for you. But if you're looking at your life and you're thinking, huh, maybe there's more to this, maybe I'm wrong about a couple of things. Well, you're going to love this episode. So great morning, Alexi. Great morning, Kalpana. Great morning, John. Great to see everybody on Substack and folks chiming in. And we'll say one more. Please put, yes, please put the like and respect each other. Okay. I like that. And this guy, he says, laugh aloud. This guy isn't a doctor of anything. That's awesome, isn't that? So there's another example. So there's the knee jerk. Well done, Will Smoot. Um, so there's the knee jerk reaction is just like, yes, I'm a doctor. I went to school and I became a doctor, right? Um, but we pause that, and then we say, let's pause the knee jerk reflex, which is conditioned, right? And let's just start empathetically thinking about Will Smoot and just say, why would I wonder why Will said that? I mean, we don't know each other. And there must be going something going on in his life that would make him want to challenge whether or not I'm a doctor or something like that, right? And then I get to this place where I don't know. Will, I don't know what's going on with you, man, you know? But I do know that you felt compelled to say something like that. So I'll just sit with empathy, and just look at you as a fellow human being and appreciate you for giving me this opportunity to think about it. So big props to Will for saying that I'm not a doctor. All right, let's have some fun. So in this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to explore the neuroscience of belief and perception, revealing how what we believe in is not only shaping our reality, but our health and our behavior as well. You guys understand what it means to be worried sick, right? If you're flying off the handle and your knee jerk reflex is running the show, um, that's not good for your health, right? And then you also understand that your mood will dictate how much and what you start consuming. You know what I mean? Like if I'm fired up and read about something because, maybe Will got me upset, well, then my whole day is going to be strategically aligned with that rather than like being a good dad or eating healthy or something like that. So that's why this is so important. And we're going to draw from not just theory, we're going to draw from modern neuroscience, epigenetics, and the biology of belief. Got some great stuff for you there. So this conversation is going to unpack how the brain predicts reality. So think about that. We're going to talk about how the brain predicts reality and also acknowledge how that doesn't make it real. It just makes your prediction. And we're going to run this stuff. We're going to run the biology of belief and this idea of beyond belief. We're going to run belief itself through the interface response system, like I've kind of done in the interim here. So House of Flow says, "I love how you live your shirt statement." Yeah, and also, when people see this shirt, sometimes they think that I just don't give a crap about anything, and that's not true. I care deeply about things, but what this shirt means is, just in case you were wondering, and we went through some of those instances, um, I don't care about anything that doesn't matter. I don't care about stupid shit that has nothing to do with the things that matter most. So I like to let people know that in advance, just in case. Like, because we call them flow burglars in my book, which is launching on Wednesday night, by the way. And you guys are all invited. If anybody wants to be in, it's limited seating. It's got 100 seats, and I think we have like almost 90 people already registered. But if you want to come, ask for the registration. Reach out to me. But in the book, we call these people flow burglars. And that's not a bad thing, Will and Moises. A flow burglar is somebody that is looking to steal your flow, but they don't know that they are, right? And to be honest with you, from an empathetic position, I used to be a flow burglar. I used to knock people down that I felt threatened by, but I would have admitted that then. But I would knock people down that I perceived were having some sort of success. I don't know if you've ever been like that. So, flow burglars are the people in your life that you're probably trying to avoid. But once again, they're opportunistic, and I love flow burglars because it's like going to the gym. It's like picking up a dumbbell. It's training. So, God, without these people coming into your life, you wouldn't have any training. So, oh, Will's back. He says, "Stop projecting and just tell us your field of study." So he called, and then he called me a jackass. So I welcome you guys to evaluate that. So it's important to him. Now, if he wants to, he can look it up. and then he can figure it out on his own. But what Will is trying to do, for whatever reason, and we don't know that because he's a flow burglar, is he's trying to get me to make him feel powerful. Isn't that interesting? So that's an opportunity once again. So, Will, I'd be happy to talk to you after the show and provide you with my credentials, and I'd be happy to do that. And then he says, "Stop playing." So he's still here. He's still here. He's spending a lot of time with us this morning. So stop playing the bullshit victim card and tell us where you obtain. Does Can I ask a question? Does If everybody in the majority, does everybody want me to spend a lot of time telling you about my credentials right now? Is that important to everybody, or just Will? Is that important? Okay. Well, I right now, I don't think anybody else gives a shit. So I'm gonna give you the opportunity to reach out to me, and we'll have a whole conversation about that. Or you could just Google me and look it up and say, "Oh shit, he is a doctor." Okay. So let's get into this. Let's begin with something most people never dispute in life. This is a perfect episode for a lot of these kind of people. And here's something that a lot of people don't dispute because we don't even think about disputing in life. Belief feels like truth. And you can see it playing out. We're having live examples of it right now. It feels earned and it feels worthy of protection. So, like, let's say I say something is important. Like Will is saying, this is important that you prove to me that you're not full of shit, right? And that's a belief system that that's important. But everybody else is thinking it's not important to me. But that's your belief system as well. One's not better than the other. But when we have a belief, we feel like it's true and we protect it. And if it's threatened, we'll protect it even more. Right. So from a neuroscience standpoint, and that's what's important, is this is not just theory. From a neuroscience standpoint, belief feels solid and valuable because it stabilizes perception. And listen to this, belief stabilizes perception, but it also reduces uncertainty. When we believe in something, that's the value, is it's reducing our uncertainty. And another thing that it does, which is why we tether to it, is that it calms our nervous system down. When we believe in something, it reduces uncertainty and it calms our nervous system down. That's why Will is so upset right now, is because I'm not fulfilling something. Like, if I'm driving at somebody and getting them to try to prove something to me, the greatest thing in the world in my mind would be that I find out that I was right. Like, that's what he wants to know. This is great for my episode, by the way, Will, so keep it coming. Um, but what he doesn't know, like, let's say he was right. Let's say I'm a charlatan and I'm lying and all that stuff. What would how would that enrich his day? He doesn't know that yet. So he'd be like, "Yeah, I knew it. I was right. This guy's full of shit." But then what? You still have a day ahead of you and you still have to, like, live your life, and I get to live mine. And then on the other end of it, let's say that his beliefs were wrong and he finds out, which he can, that he's wrong. What will that do for him or me? It doesn't change the day ahead of us. We still have to enjoy ourselves and take good care of ourselves, try to be a good human and things like that. So one of my favorite mentors always said, "What did anybody ever get out of being right?" I think that's really cool. When you reach the goal of being right, you haven't reached anything. I love that. So remember, reduce uncertainty and it also calms your nervous system. And yet at the same time, every major breakthrough, and this is what I found when I did this research, every major breakthrough that we depend on seems to lie beyond the comfort of our beliefs. Sit with that for a second. This kind of falls into where does growth take place? Outside the comfort zone, right? So it says every major breakthrough that we hope and depend on seems to lie beyond, remember, this is called beyond belief, beyond the comfort of our beliefs. and it lies in the land of what we call unthinkable, right? And a lot of people don't like to entertain unthinkable because they like to be right because it gives them power. And if we feel weak, we're going to seek power. And that's kind of what's going on. And just so you know, comment wise, I'm not looking at the comments yet, but I will come back to them because I'm sure Will is fired up still. Um, awesome. So, in the land of unthinkable is where we're going to go today. Is the internet, things like the internet, the smartphones, and maybe AI, which is a hot topic right now. All unbelievable and unthinkable. Imagine if I was talking to Will about the idea of the internet before it came. Oh boy, he would love that topic. He'd be like, "That's preposterous. Prove it to me. Prove it to me." And I wouldn't be able to. But here it is, right? Here it is. I've got my phone on my screen here. I've got a laptop. I've got cameras and lights and live streaming and some sort of internet and a microphone and podcast equipment and all that stuff. All unthinkable and unbelievable until they happened. So the real question today isn't whether beliefs are powerful. That's not what we're pondering today. It's what happens when belief quietly shifts from a useful tool, which you think is useful when you're in the moment, and it shifts from a useful tool into a poison. Can you relate how your beliefs can shift from being useful and in support of what it is that you want, but into a poison that shuts you off from the rest of the world? That's what I saw on social media. That's what I'm seeing here in some of the comments. I don't have a problem with alternative beliefs, but what I see is a behavior that where it's shut off to everything. And I just love living in this space where I don't shut myself. That's why I wear this hat. That's why a big part of my book is teaching that cognitive distancing of, hmm, I like to just walk through life not having made up my mind about anything. I don't know if Will and Moises are good people. I'm sure they are, right? And I don't need to judge. I don't need to know anything that you don't want me to know, right? Because I haven't made up my mind about you. I don't have enough information, and I'm not even sure if it's important yet. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to introduce the core signal of today, and here it is. In a strong frame, which is, I hope, what we're creating here, belief ends up being a shortcut that the brain uses to reduce uncertainty. Please sit with that. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Belief is a shortcut that the brain uses to reduce uncertainty, but certainty comes at the cost of curiosity. When you are standing for your belief and you're not willing to move beyond it, and you want to be right versus kind, you're removing yourself from things like potential and curiosity. But you'll be very good at pretending that you don't need those in that moment. What about adaptability and long-term brain health? If you look at the studies. So what that's saying is that if you're stuck with your stuff, it's it's taking you out of the game of life. And it's also affecting your health, how long you're gonna live. Now, if that makes you angry, that's fine. I would be angry too. I was very angry the day that I found out that I was always trying to be right versus kind. I was very angry about that. But it came in handy one day when I decided to get out of my way. So, isn't that interesting? So why let's talk about why the brain clings to belief. We got to know the science of it. If we don't understand this, and this would be the time if you're not here to actually entertain disputing your belief, this you definitely have to go now because we're going to go into some of the science of how it happens. But we're going to talk about why the brain clings to belief. So beliefs don't form because humans are irrational, by the way. These are not irrational triggered things. They form because uncertainty, I love this, uncertainty is a metabolically expensive thing. It's exhausting being uncertain. If you're confused and you know what it's like to feel confused, It's exhausting, and we don't like to do that much work. It's frustrating. That's why a lot of people will move on to something else, but it's exhausting to be frustrated. So that's why the brain always leans towards trying to fill in the gap, make something up, and create a belief system. And once we like it enough, and maybe it's conducive with our mother, father, teacher, preacher, and in our environment, we're going to stick with it and we're going to protect it because it's metabolically expensive to be confused or in disbelief. So, from a neuroscience perspective, once again, the brain is a predictive machine. Everybody has this. It evolved to anticipate threats, right? We know this from, great books out there like Sapien, great book. It evolved from to anticipate threats, conserve energy, and maintain stability. That's why our brains are predicting machines. Belief is one of the most efficient strategies at restoring and regulating your energy. Now, there's a very big downside to it, but that's why it's there. It reduces ambiguity. That comes in handy, right? Does anybody want to walk around ambiguously? No. It stabilizes your identity. Oh, isn't it important for our identity to have a belief system? And it also creates the illusion of control. So whenever you're in an interface, or you guys got to evaluate me having one with a couple of people, but you're going to have them with people today, and you'll see them on TV, and you'll see Republican, Democrat, religions, all of that stuff. You'll constantly see belief systems colliding. So just understand why they're both doing that. They're fighting for reducing ambiguity. They're fighting for their identities. They're fighting to minimize their metabolic expenditure of their brain. So when you see it, you're like, hey, I get it. I get it. So you don't have to form an opinion. This is more about you. And this is about you asking yourself, like, what role do I want to play in this? Like, what kind of a day do I want to have? You get to ask yourself that when somebody attacks you, unsolicitedly attacks you and says something, you're still allowed to have a good day. You're still allowed to have a good day. And remember, if anybody's firing off comments and stuff, I will come look at them. I promise I will give them my acknowledgement. Like, so if anybody has like really bad things to say, I promise I will read them all because I know that that's important. So here's the reframe that matters today. We don't cling to beliefs because they're true. We cling to beliefs because they make us feel safe. We don't cling to beliefs because they're actually true. I know we think they're true. We cling to them because they make us feel safe. So, this is where fear enters the equation: fear of being wrong, fear of instability, fear of losing an identity. That's why beliefs are so important. And remember, I'm not asking you to get rid of your beliefs. I have no right to. That's not what this is about. Remember, all I ever want to do is point things out. And I think some of the biggest breakthroughs that I've ever made came from me just finding out something that I didn't know because I was blocked to it. So here's a trade off to consider today. What if the goal isn't to replace your beliefs, just as I said, but to temporarily set them down or set them aside long enough to see what else exists? What if that was a goal that we set today? Not to get rid of our beliefs, God forbid, because we know the value. But what if our goal was to set them aside, put them down long enough to entertain not only what else exists, but maybe find something better or more factual or even more conducive? You don't have to change your ways, but do you know everything? One of my favorite questions to ask, and I've shared it with you many times, is what else might be true, JC? Because my knee-jerk reflex when somebody says something mean to me or insults or something like that, I have to put that aside because my belief system is engineering that and say what else might be true. And when I do that, I start to think empathetically for them. And it just moves it further and further away from being about me. Great morning, Matthew Brownfield. Last man standing. Good to see you folks here. So that's the trade off. So this is the beginning of cognitive flexibility, and that's what it's called. So perception isn't reality, it's actually a best guess. So modern neuroscience radically changes this conversation, and that's what we're going to talk about. So there's somebody that I invite you guys, one of the YouTube channels that I like to follow is called The Big Think. It's just fun. It's great interviews. And there's a great big think on a woman named Lisa Feldman Barrett. So you can go look it up. That's where what I'm about to share comes from. So Lisa Feldman Barrett was asked, because she's a genius in this area, she's got a lot of time and effort into this area. She was asked whether or not our perception of reality accurately represents reality. So she was asked a question: to what degree is what I believe reality is, to what degree is it accurate, knowing how the brain works? So this is going to piss off a lot of people. So what she said is, you know, it's not very accurate. She says it's a question that we need to deep dive in, but it's not exactly the way reality works. Was her answer. She says your brain does not experience reality directly. Now, this is an important thing for us to understand because it gives us the ability to validate putting our beliefs on hold. We have to know how we create beliefs. We know why we create beliefs, okay? But we're going to entertain the idea of maybe putting them on hold. So I'm giving you the reason why you would want to challenge or dispute your own beliefs because it doesn't experience reality directly. It operates inside what she describes as a dark box. So when somebody has a belief and they're not willing to change their mind, when you meet somebody that wants to be right and they're driving at it and driving at it and driving at it, what she's saying is that person's brain, just like a lot of us, is in a dark box. And in that dark box, is yourself, receiving incomplete, that's why she calls it a box. It's yourself receiving incomplete sensory signals and predicting the rest. That's the way the brain works, is we just get little bits and pieces of information, and then our conditioned mind from our mother, father, teacher, preacher, society, evolution, whatever some of these people that we've been interacting with or experiencing in life, makes up the rest to your liking. And you know why, right? Safety, security, identity, and all that stuff. So reality, as you experience it, is actually therefore a construction, not a direct feed. In other words, much of what you call reality is made up by your brain, taking the limited data it actually sees and then making the rest of that shit up. Yeah, Lisa Feldman Barrett. We don't see things how they are, we see things how we are. Right. I mean, I just said right. I'm just saying that's one way of looking at all this. Just remember that if somebody's here with us today and thinks this is all bullshit, they're just as right as you because we're always going to be limited by the degree to which we allow ourselves to entertain things. So it just even if you're on a complete other side of somebody, like let's say somebody is saying something really inappropriate and that's their belief system, that's okay. And then on the other side, people are saying, that's really fucked up. I would never say something like that. Neither of you is more right than the other, but you both think you are. That's belief. That's belief. So what I'm saying is even if I think inside that I'm 100% certain of something, I will allow myself to dispute that so that I can move into the space where I can better understand somebody else that's completely different. So here's some key implications from Barrett's brain theory. So the brain never sees reality, it only sees signals and little slices of it. Meaning itself is generated, not discovered. We're meaning making machines, not meaning discovering machines. We make up most of the meaning. It's not like some sort of scroll that you find under a rock. We actually write the scroll, or most of it. We fill in the gaps. Here's another one. Perception is actually just prediction. Now, remember, I'm not telling you things. I'm regurgitating what we got from Lisa Barrett. So perception is prediction. Yes, the meaning-making machines in our skulls are projectors. They're projectors. It's such a nice thing to step away from a conversation and not have to participate in it emotionally and step away from it and just evaluate one's projection and say, huh, interesting. So that's remember, whenever adversity strikes, if you allow yourself to do this work, when you get my book and you learn about the interface response system, it's like the world becomes a game. And you realize you no longer have to be a victim of anything. You're in control. So when my book comes out and it's going to be early release on the 11th, if you guys want to come, even even those of you that have been really mean, I welcome you to come too, because you'll see that I never kick people out of sessions because they're saying things inappropriately because it's an awesome opportunity. Like, I'm more concerned about other people that are bothered by it, I guess, but I'm not bothered by it. I'm excited by it. I'm actually flattered that people they don't even know this, but I'm flattered that people spend their precious time with me. You know what I mean? Isn't that interesting? I love it. So perception is a prediction. So this leads to what neuroscience calls reverse inference problem, the reverse inference problem. And here's what it is. We assume that because something feels real, it must be real. Now, we never stop to think about that. But if something feels real, it must be real, right? I don't know about that. I mean, you might think that way, but for me at this time, I don't know. I know I feel it and I know what it feels like to believe things, but what I've learned from reading a lot of books and hearing some amazing people speak is I think might be making that up. But often beliefs are actually post hoc explanations. Prediction is mistaken as perception. So what that's saying is that we're predicting things, meaning we're making it up, but it's got the illusion of being an actual perception. So, you guys know the whole idea of what you see is what you get. It's true. What you see is what you get. The question that we're asking right now is, does that make it what is? Does that make it what is? Okay. So let's talk about the biology of belief. And the king in that realm is just somebody that I love to devour. And that is Bruce Lipton. He's one of the three amigos. I love all three of them. So that's Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, and Joe Dispenza. They're known as the three amigos. If you ever get an opportunity to go see one of their seminars, I highly recommend it. It's just great stuff. So we're going to move from mind into body right now. And this is Bruce Lipton's work. So Bruce Lipton says that, and he demonstrates that genes are not our destiny. So he's done a lot of cool work. So he says environment and crucially, our perception of the environment is actually what influences the expression of genes. So basically, what Bruce Lipton is saying is that if he takes genes, just genes, and he puts them in a petri dish alone, they're just genes. But it's only when he exposes them to cocktails and environments that they will manifest into bone or muscle tissue or things like that. So there's a lot of genetic stuff going on, but what he's saying is it's not the gene that expresses things, it's the environment. And can you see the correlation? So the biology of our beliefs is not much different, right? It's not actually our beliefs are not correlated so much with facts, but rather, persuaded and shaped by our environment and what we think about our environment. So here's what's interesting about that. If you meet somebody that's very, very kind and very, very optimistic and, just a good listener, you can kind of evaluate what kind of an environment they come from. But if you meet somebody that's combative and mean and trying to knock you down, you step away from that. You don't have to participate in it. But can you see what their environment must be like? Now, if you're that person and you're recognizing right now Like, is he saying that I'm a bad person because I'm being, mean or something like that? Because they don't think that they're being mean. They're justified in it. But it does make you think. That's why I love saying, when somebody attacks me or something attacks me in life. I say, because I always like to ask myself, I wonder what's going on the other side. Because, like, the only time that I will ever say something mean or knock any of you down is because I'm having a bad day. You know what I mean? Like, I would never, like, right now, I'm feeling great. I would never just randomly say something mean to somebody because my environment is healthy. It's healthy. So isn't that interesting? So that's how you can move into empathy as well with people. So this is where the placebo, this is Bruce Lipton's work, the placebo and the nocebo come into play. And this is important in really understanding the science. So, he gives examples of how you could go see a doctor and a doctor could, do a great job of explaining how the pill that he's giving you or the drug that he's giving you is exactly what you need and it's going to heal you. And you heal. And you don't find out till later that it was a sugar pill. That's what a placebo is. So what Lipton is showing you is that it wasn't the pill, it was the environment created around the pill and the belief in the pill. So a nocebo reminds you, and this is why you got to watch out for flow burglars. The nocebo means that even if somebody was going to just like test your strength and say something mean to you, like even if you were just like in some sort of double blind test and somebody was going to be mean to you, and it worked, and you got, like, worried sick and upset, and it just it created this cascade of mood and a personality came out of it and all that stuff. You're a victim and trauma and all that stuff, and then later find out, "Hey, man, we didn't actually mean what we said. It was a test." So that would be a nocebo, right? So we're just seeing that it's the environment. It's the environment and the belief system around it. Okay, that's a very, very important study to recognize because it helps you look at your environment right now and say, what is it that I'm consuming with regularity? Whatever I consume with regularity ends up being what I assume with regularity. And how am I controlling the only thing that's in my control? And that's my response. Because there's things that I can't avoid. I can't avoid flow burglars. As a matter of fact, the more people that listen to my podcast and the more attention I get, the more flow burglars will come. The more opportunities I'll have, because people hate to see other people winning in life. I've been there. I used to hate when people that I knew well were doing better than me. And I never knew it, but I used to say mean things to them or say, oh, you're going to bomb. You're just on a quick run or something like that. Why? I understand why I used to do that because I didn't feel good about myself, but that's where all this stuff comes from. So belief is not just psychological, it's also physiological. And this is why we see the world getting worried sick right now. That's why it's important for you to be able to separate yourself. So moving beyond belief is really now about longevity and brain health. I'm going to share with you guys a study because I'm writing a whole kind of a dissertation on this. I'm going to share with you a study that is peer reviewed. I think it comes out of Harvard or something like that. But that shows that people that just allow themselves to be open and curious and learn new things, not just be stuck in their way, are actually maintaining cognitive capabilities longer, living longer, and having a better quality of life just by remaining open and curious. So if you're closed and you have exclamation points and you don't ever entertain question marks, but you don't want to learn anything new, even about yourself, it's not a good forecast, right? So it's not just psychological, it's physical. So this is where this conversation, and we're kind of moving to the latter part of it here, but it expands to longevity and mental health. That's what we're talking about right now. So research, just like I showed you right there, is that people that exhibit curiosity and openness to support, openness to learning things, these things support cognitive resilience, slower cognitive decline, That's something that's really important to me. My biggest fear is losing my brains, right? Now somebody's probably in YouTube saying, "He's got no brains." I love you guys. I love all of you. I love all of you. And also better adaptation with age. I will if you reach out to me before the piece comes out, it'll be in the podcast episode. I'll give you the link. So rigid belief. So here's the opposite from being open and curious. Rigid belief, and we've seen some examples of this morning, and we're seeing it now with the Super Bowl. Rigid belief, by contrast, reduces neuroplasticity, reduces neuroplasticity. Remember, this is not me saying it. I'll give you the article. Certainty may feel strong. Okay, this doesn't say much for feelings, but limits growth neurologically. So my best friend for 25 years is this guy, Jim Quick, who wrote a book called Limitless. And we were joking about this because we were joking about how limited we are in our five senses and abilities and our program conditioned nature and all of this stuff. We were limited. We're just recognizing we're limited. So his New York Times bestseller was called Limitless. So we were just joking. We're going to write a book together called Limited. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing to look at. So here's a subtle but powerful reframe that we can use right now. Certainty feels safe, but it's curiosity that will keep you alive. I'm going to say that again. So this is based on those studies. Certainty feels good, dopamine wise, it feels safe. And a lot of books tell you that you need certainty. Set a goal, get a goal. But it's curiosity that we're finding keeps us alive. Hmm. So throw a couple hms around. Allow yourself to not make up your mind, or at least not so fast. So in the context of things like I'm frightened of, like Alzheimer's prevention and long-term brain health, staying open and curious, you know, it's very practical for those things. So let's just quickly run this idea through the interface response system. Remember, the interface response system is kind of my flagship program. It'll be in the book. I hope you guys will enjoy that, or I hope you'll read it and hate it and tell me how much you hated it. But I hope you at least expose yourself to it. So we're going to run belief through the four steps, and this would be giving you the ability to create that space and come up with a response rather than a reaction. What you're seeing in some of the behavior and the interactions that I was having before, those are reactions. Those are not responses. A response is one that's well thought out. It's not coming from like viscerally from your conditioned mind. So the first thing that we would do, step one would be perceive. That's the first step of the interface response system. And that's just where we notice the belief without defending it. Okay. And we also know a lot more about belief right now. So step two would be saying, pause it, put it aside long enough that you'll allow yourself to step into the space of possibilities, or you could even entertain different ideas and maybe move to step three, which is called process. So because now we're in the space, we've put our knee jerk reflex on pause. We can go get it back anytime we want. But now we can not only dispute, but contemplate. And from a curious place, which we now know is healthy, is start to look at alternative perspectives. What else might be true? What else might be true? What might be going on with that person right there? And then we move to step four, where we proceed, where we create a response versus a reaction. So that's the way the interface response system works with this. So the interface response system is not something that transforms belief from, well, it actually is in a sense. The interface response system is something that transforms belief from an identity into some sort of a hypothesis. It's open and it's curious. If you have an identity based on a belief, there's no openness to that. You're going to protect that. So in this framework, belief becomes optional. That's tough. That's tough for people to do. It becomes temporary in some sense, and it's also updatable. I like my beliefs to always remain updatable. Are you updatable or no? Or no? So that's cognitive freedom, and that promotes longevity and quality of life. So in closing, and I promise I'm going to go look at all your mean comments. I promise. And maybe you've and sometimes what's fun about mean comments is sometimes people will fight them in the comments, and that's another interesting thing to observe, but that sometimes they'll recruit people and say, "Yeah, let's gang up on this guy." So I just want everybody to know, breaking news, I don't care, um, in the sense that you'd hope that I care, but from a open and curious place of human behavior, I'm fascinated by it. I'm fascinated every time I see human beings just like sleepwalking and not entertaining anything else. And the reason why it fascinates me is because that's the way I was most of my life. And I remember when I was like that, I had no idea. I had no idea. So, in closing, maybe the most powerful move today isn't finding the right belief. And remember, I'm not saying your belief is wrong. You think it's right. That's all that matters. Maybe it's more about reclaiming your right to not rush into one. That's a thought. Have I been forced or rushed into this belief? Or did I really contemplate and decide that it is what is? Maybe it's more about reclaiming your right to not rush into one. So to sit with uncertainty, kids are struggling with that right now. To sit with uncertainty, allow yourself to stay curious and let the believable remain possible and let the unbelievable remain possible as well. Because everything meaningful that we now rely on in our lives once required someone brave enough to say, just like the phone and the internet and all that stuff, right? Or even just on a small front, maybe I am a doctor, right? It had to start with somebody brave enough to say, what if there's more? What if there's more? So the final question that I would ask you guys that you can contemplate, because I have to go look at all the comments. I could see that there's a lot of them and I don't want to get them too angry. Um, Last question. What belief are you protecting right now? What belief are you protecting right now? Not because it's true, but because letting go of it feels unsafe. Isn't that interesting? Okay. So let's see. Wow, we got a lot of stuff here. It's starting to get to the point where you're being disrespectful. Okay, so somebody is saying that I was being disrespectful, and I would assume, and that's 97. So I think the perception that I'm being disrespectful. First of all, I apologize because I don't want to be disrespectful. I think that probably comes from me not playing into it. you know, I know I will say that I'm sorry that I used somebody's belief system as an example. That was disrespectful. You're right. I didn't know about it at the time. Um, and then also they went and found out that I'm a chiropractor, and that's why I call myself a doctor. But some people are of the persuasion that that's not a doctor. So that I hope that that makes you happy. Um, okay. In fairness, I actually respect chiropractic medicine. Thank you, Virtual Billy. I mean, there's so much stuff here. Hey, self-proclaimed charlatan, what are your credentials? Well, you know them right now. I'm a doctor of chiropractic, but a lot of people, will play with that. But so you can see that they've got a couple of they've got a little bit of a friendship going on. God, Will Smoot, I got to tell you something. He spent a lot of time with us this morning. Uh, and then, oh, please respect the comment section. That was very brave of you, Leah, to just jump into this comment section and say, please respect it. I appreciate that, but that is what they want. They've got somebody. Oh, we got somebody. We got somebody to interact with. All right. So I don't see anything relevant there. I just see, you know, people trying to be right. But anyway, I love and appreciate you all of you. I really do. In my acknowledgments of my book, I very, very sincerely, not in a disrespectful way, um, I'm very, very grateful for adversity. I've been through a lot of adversity, and that's how I've established this place where I don't find myself being bothered by stuff that is nothing in comparison to what I've actually been through. Um, but I really appreciate the opportunity, whether it comes from the universe or comes from some of you, um, to challenge myself. But it also makes me recognize how some of you are just so incredibly special and people that I love having in my life. So remember, if you learn something today, give it away. That's how it's going to stay. And I love and respect your time, and I'm honored that you spent it with me today. And even if it was in a negative sense, um, honored, honored. So have an amazing day, and I'll see you next month. We're going to talk next time. We're going to talk about brain rot next week. Great, great topic there. So love you guys. Thank you. Thanks, Will. Thank Moses. Thanks, you know, all you guys. 90, 97. Love you guys. Have a great day. Appreciate it.